We know the location from Atlantis exact. In the time frame, Plato have lived in 427 BC. So he's very accurate with the date when the collapse from Atlantis was. Because why? Because in 11,200 BC, scientific tell us that was the moment when we have the 4 seasons. The 4 seasons like we know today was only existed in 11,200 BC and not before. So that means before we have only 3 seasons, and after 11,200 we have 4 seasons. And that's begin to make it logic, because if Atlantis was a big continent between America and Europe and was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf Stream on that moment cannot reach the north because you have in the middle the continent. So the Gulf Stream was stopping more or less near the west coast from Africa. But after the collapse of Atlantis and the sinking of the continent, the Gulf Stream came tot in Iceland, tot in Greenland. And when the Gulf Stream was coming higher in the Atlantic Ocean, the ice caps of Europe and North America was melting on that moment. And for this we talk about the 4 seasons on 11,200 BC. So we can be sure and we can be accurate that the collapse from Atlantis is between 11,427 BC and 11,200 BC. So that means that Atlantis is the Atlantic Ridge, the Atlantic Mountains. The Atlantic Mountains were today under the sea was one day a continent above the sea. And like many people have seen maybe the movie from 2012, we see really the continent what's going in the ocean. That was the same thing what's happening with Atlantis. We know the location from Atlantis exact, but the continent was falling in the ocean and all the debris from the mountains was falling on the cities. So that means that Atlantis is more than 30 meters, 40 meters under a big layer of ground and mountains what was falling on the plateau from the continent. In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we found the Mount Plato. We know already more than 500 years the exact location from Atlantis. If you want to do one day research on the exact location from Atlantis and we go to the exact spot in the Atlantic Ocean, you need to scan more than 255,000 square kilometers. That's only the location where the city was. It's on full debris. So that means you have here Europe, you have the Atlantic Ridge, and you have North America. If you take these 3 continents together, Atlantis was in the middle of the 2 continents and was also a big continent. So that means also, if you put these continents together, the Bermuda Triangle come on the top from Atlantis. The Bermuda Triangle was part of Atlantis when everything was not one together. So we talk about Pangea, the last world continent. So that means also when there was one continent and you have Europe and America together and you have between Atlantis and there was going from each other away, that means also the continent from Atlantis was beginning to split. It was obvious that in the future this continent will collapse in the ocean. So that means that Atlantis was also splitting on that moment. So when the continent was together, you have near Iceland one big crack from the plateaus, and that is more than 200 kilometers a crack. Now this crack you have in the north and you have this crack in the south. These 2 cracks from 200 kilometers to the left side and to the right side destroyed the continent. There was a big earthquake, and the earthquake in the north was going to the left and in the south was going to the right. So you have in the middle, so that means you have in the middle the continent and was splitting. And because it was splitting with a big earthquake where the earth was moving more than 200 kilometers in the north and in the south, have given a big tsunami and the continent was falling in the ocean. And a big tsunami have taken Atlantis away. And the continent have sink in a few hours. The only restants of Atlantis are the Azores, are the last mountains from Atlantis. So if you want the exact location of Atlantis, you need to do only a research on the Great Meteor Table Mound. The Great Meteor Table Mound, if you find these mountains in the ocean, you go 10 to 20 kilometers to the north, there you find the sea mountain of Plato. By coincidence, somebody have given the name from these mountains Plato. And there, 10 kilometers more to the north, you find the exact location of the city of Atlantis. Also around the Table Mount and the Mount of Plato, you find different debris, you find different structures. What you see from the sky, that there was ancient structures. Maybe it is time that Freemasons, Templars and Illuminati masters tell also about their research of Atlantis. And let's be honest, I think the archive that we have, the many researches that was done by old Freemasons and old Templars, all this information together with the information from Plato's books, we have the exact location where Atlantis was.